Out our back window, I have bird feeders, which inevitably means that I have squirrels. And in the distance, farther away, I can see some houses, and even way out there, some big silos. But here's the thing, the squirrels just outside the window look bigger than the silos in the distance. If I take 2 fingers at arm's length and measure the height of the squirrel and then move that measurement over to the silo, what I find is that the squirrel looks much bigger. Now I know that that's not actually true. I know squirrels aren't bigger than silos. I've climbed a silo before. It was really big. When I looked down from the top, I felt like my stomach was in my throat. But if I'm just looking from my back window, then from my vantage point, the squirrel is disproportionately big. It takes up a disproportionate amount of my field of view. Now our lives can be a lot like that. Let's take a stereotypical example. Let's say I'm fixated on my appearance. I lean in close to the mirror to examine every flaw. And I look critically at my body. And the more I obsess over all that, the more every flaw seems bigger. I mean, you can come up with hundreds of examples. If you're stuck in traffic when you're trying to get somewhere, that traffic jam takes up a big part of your mind. You might even find yourself yelling or cursing at the cars around you. Now, in the grand scheme of your life, even in the scheme of your week, that traffic jam is just a small thing. But just like that squirrel, it seems bigger than it is in the moment. Or maybe there's something in your life that you're worrying about. And the more you worry, the more of your life that worry takes up. And it starts to overshadow much bigger things, like a squirrel looking bigger than a silo. You get the picture. This reminds me of a story that Jesus tells in the Bible. Jesus' primary way of teaching crowds of people was by simply telling them stories. And this story that Jesus tells is about a farmer who's out planting. And this farmer scatters seed in various places along a trampled and hardened path where the seed doesn't even get into the ground, it just becomes bird seed. The seed also falls in a rocky place where it's not able to take root, and so it withers right away. And some seed falls among thorny plants. So there's presumably decent earth there because plants are growing. But that means that the seeds are competing for real estate with thorns and weeds. And as the seeds grow along with the thorny plants take up a disproportionate amount of the resources. And the thorny plants choke the seed plants, so the seed plants don't bear grain. The seed plants exist, but they can't flourish because they're being choked. Jesus explains to his disciples what he's talking about. Different people are like the different soils, and the seed is God's message. And here's what Jesus says about the third soil with the thorns. These people hear the message, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and desires for other things come in and choke the message, making it unfruitful. These people exist, but their lives are choked by worries and preoccupation. These people exist, but they can't flourish. These people have worries and desires that are disproportionately dominating their field of view, and they lose their sight of God. So how would you assess your life right now? Are there worries or desires that are disproportionately big, that are taking up too much of your field of view? In 1 John we read, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God." And that is what we are. Are there things in your life that are keeping you from seeing that great love of God because these other concerns seem closer while God seems distant? That's why Jesus says, like we saw last week, don't worry about your clothes or your life. Seek God first. Worries and distractions will choke you. You need to remember, you are not your worries. You are not your ambitions. You are not your accomplishments. You are not your failures. You are not your possessions or your lack of possessions. You are not your fears or your hopes. You are a child of God through Christ. Now, in the present tense. So take a few moments to clear your vision and see what great love the Father has lavished on you, that you should be called children of God, because that is what you are. You see, there's a last soil in Jesus' story. It's a good soil. There are no thorns, and when the seed of God's message falls there, it flourishes. That's God's desire for your life. In fact, that's God's promise for your life. And our worries and our distractions and desires get in the way of us living into that promise. Jesus tells us there's another way, free of worry and free of aimless desire. Jesus invites you today to change your vantage point, to get close to the big thing that really matters. Get close to the promise and the hope that you are a child of God. Because if I were standing on that silo, I would not even be able to see the squirrel out my back window. I would be so caught up in the beauty of looking around and being on that great big thing. And that's what standing on the love of God is like. Have a great week.